Daniel had taken worse jobs before, but something about this one felt wrong from the moment he arrived. The building stood at the edge of the city, isolated and forgotten, its broken windows staring like empty eyes into the night. It used to be a hospital, people said that much, but no one ever explained why it had been shut down so suddenly. Some said it was a fire. Others whispered about patients who never left. Daniel didn't care. He needed money, and this was the only job that called him back. The gate creaked as he pushed it open, the sound echoing louder than it should have. Inside, the air smelled stale, like dust and something older, something rotten. The lights flickered weakly in the hallway, barely keeping the darkness away. At the far end, a man sat behind a small desk, half hidden in shadows. "You're late," the man muttered without looking up. Daniel checked his watch. "I'm right on time." The man didn't argue. Instead, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper, sliding it across the desk. "Your shift starts now. Ends at 6. Daniel picked up the paper, confused. "That's it? No instructions?" "Everything you need is on that sheet." Daniel gave a small, awkward laugh. "You're serious?" The man finally looked at him, and for a second, Daniel felt uneasy. His eyes were tired, but there was something else too. Fear. "Just follow the rules," he said quietly. Daniel frowned. "What happens if I don't?" The man didn't answer. He simply stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked past Daniel without another word. As he reached the exit, he paused for just a moment. "Whatever you hear tonight," he added, his voice low, "don't trust it." Then he left. Daniel stood alone in the silence, the sound of the door clicking shut behind him echoing through the empty building. For a moment, he considered walking out too. But rent was due, and fear didn't pay bills. He made his way to the small security room, the only place with working monitors. The screens showed different parts of the hospital: dark hallways, empty rooms, abandoned equipment. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, Daniel unfolded the paper. The handwriting was messy, almost rushed, as if whoever wrote it hadn't wanted to spend too much time doing so. He began to read, and with each line, the silence around him seemed to grow heavier. The first hour dragged on with a strange, suffocating slowness. Daniel tried to keep himself distracted, leaning back in the creaky chair as his eyes moved from one monitor to another. Every screen showed the same thing: empty corridors, broken furniture, peeling walls. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. It almost felt like the entire building was frozen in time. He checked the clock. 12:21 a.m. Easy money, he muttered under his breath, trying to convince himself more than anything else. But the silence was starting to feel unnatural. It wasn't just quiet, it was too quiet. No distant traffic, no wind outside, not even the hum of electricity you'd expect in a place like this. Just a heavy, pressing stillness that made his ears ring. Daniel sat up straight, rubbing his arms. The temperature seemed to drop slightly, or maybe it was just his imagination. He leaned forward, focusing on the screens again. That's when one of them flickered. He froze. The monitor labeled Hallway C buzzed softly as static crawled across the screen. The image distorted, bending and snapping back into place as if something was interfering with the signal. "Old wiring," Daniel whispered, though his voice sounded unsure. The flickering continued on, off, on again, each time lasting just a little longer. Daniel leaned closer, narrowing his eyes. At the far end of the hallway, something appeared. A shape. Tall. Thin. Standing completely still. Daniel blinked hard. The screen went clear again. Nothing was there. he let out a shaky breath and leaned back. Just shadows, yeah, just shadows. But his heart was beating faster now. He glanced down at the paper in his hand. The rules. Cameras in hallways may flicker. Do not try to fix them. A chill ran through him. Coincidence, he muttered quickly. Has to be. Still, he couldn't stop himself from looking back at the monitor. The hallway stayed empty for a few seconds. Then, the screen flickered again. This time, the figure was closer. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. It had form now. Shoulders. Arms. A head slightly tilted, as if it was watching something, or someone. Watching him. The image glitched violently, and the screen went black for a split second. When it came back, the hallway was empty again. Daniel pushed his chair back slightly, his hands gripping the armrests. No, he said quietly, shaking his head. That's not real. But deep down, something told him it was. And worse. It was getting closer. The clock ticked louder than before, each second echoing in the small security room until it felt impossible to ignore. Daniel kept his eyes fixed on it, as if watching it closely would somehow keep everything under control. When the minute hand finally reached the top, the faint click of the clock shifting to 1 a.m. sounded unnaturally sharp. He swallowed. For a moment, nothing happened. Daniel let out a slow breath and leaned back in his chair, forcing a weak smile. See? Nothing, he whispered to himself, trying to calm the rising tension in his chest. It's just a job. Then he heard it. Daniel. The voice was soft, almost gentle, like someone speaking from far away. Daniel's body went completely still. His eyes moved slowly toward the door behind him, but he didn't turn around. His fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. Daniel. This time it was clearer. Closer. He spun around. The room was empty. The door was shut. Nothing moved. A nervous laugh escaped his lips. Okay, not funny, he muttered, though there was no one there to hear him. Then the paper slipped slightly in his hand, and his eyes fell on the second rule. If you hear someone calling your name, ignore it. His stomach tightened. No, that's just messing with me, he whispered. Someone probably outside. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. There hadn't been a single sound outside all night. Daniel. The voice came again. Right behind him. He flinched hard, nearly falling out of his chair as he turned again, faster this time. Still nothing. But it didn't feel empty anymore. The air had changed. It felt occupied. Daniel, please. The tone shifted. Softer. Familiar. It sounded like someone he knew. Someone important. The kind of voice that made you want to respond without thinking. His breathing grew uneven. Help me. Daniel's hand slowly moved toward the door handle. Just check, he whispered to himself. Just 1 second. His fingers hovered inches away the knob. Then his eyes flicked back to the paper. Ignore it. He froze. The silence stretched for a moment. Then the voice spoke again. But this time, it wasn't soft. It wasn't familiar. It was wrong. Daniel, open the door. The words came out deeper, distorted, like multiple voices speaking at once. Daniel yanked his hand back as if burned, stumbling away from the door. No, he said firmly, shaking his head. You're not real. The voice didn't respond. The room fell silent again. But Daniel could still feel it. Standing just outside. Waiting. By the time the clock crept past 2 a.m., Daniel felt like he had been sitting there for days. His eyes burned from staring at the monitors, but he was too afraid to look away for long. Every second stretched painfully, and the silence had turned into something heavier, something that pressed against his chest and made it hard to breathe. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and leaned closer to the screens again. Most of them showed nothing unusual. Empty hallways. Dark rooms. Stillness. But then one of the monitors flickered. Room 12. Daniel frowned. He didn't remember noticing that room before. The camera angle showed an old hospital bed in the center, its sheets dirty and wrinkled as if someone had been lying there recently. His throat went dry. "That's not possible," he whispered. Slowly, something came into view. A figure. Sitting on the edge of the bed. Perfectly still. Daniel leaned forward without realizing it, his face inches from the screen. The figure's back was turned. Its head hung slightly, as if it were looking down at the floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, it moved. The head tilted to the side with a slow, unnatural motion. Then it turned. Not its body. Just its head. All the way around. Until it faced the camera. Daniel gasped and stumbled back, knocking his chair against the wall. The face was burned, twisted beyond recognition. The skin looked melted, stretched tight in some places and torn in others. But the worst part. The eyes. Completely black. Unblinking. Staring directly at him. "No, no, no," Daniel shook his head, backing away. "This isn't real, it can't be." The screen suddenly glitched, lines of static tearing across the image. And then the figure was gone. The bed was empty. As if nothing had ever been there. Daniel's breathing became rapid and uneven. His hands trembled as he tried to steady himself against the desk. Then, knock. The sound was soft, but it hit him like a gunshot. He froze. Knock. Knock. It came from the door behind him. Slow. Deliberate. Daniel's entire body went stiff. His eyes slowly shifted toward the paper still clutched in his hand. "If the door behind you knocks, do not open it." Another knock. Louder this time. "Daniel," the voice returned, calm and almost soothing. "We know you're in there." He squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head. "No, not listening." The knocking grew more aggressive. Bang. 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 The door rattled violently, the handle shaking as if something on the other side was trying to force its way in. "Let us in." The voice wasn't human anymore. It was layered. Broken. Angry. Daniel covered his ears, crouching down as the noise grew unbearable. "I'm not opening it. I'm not opening it." The banging continued for a few more seconds. Then suddenly, it stopped. Completely. The silence that followed was even worse than the noise. The moment the clock struck 3 a.m., the change was immediate. The air felt lighter, as if something heavy had just lifted from the room. Daniel stayed frozen where he was for a few seconds, his hands still pressed against his ears, afraid that the silence might break again. But it didn't. Slowly, he lowered his hands and opened his eyes. Nothing. No knocking. No voices. No movement. The monitors returned to normal, each screen showing the same empty, lifeless parts of the hospital. Hallway C was visible again, its flickering gone, the corridor still and quiet like before. Room 12 showed nothing but the abandoned bed. Daniel pushed himself up from the floor, his legs weak and unsteady. He moved cautiously back to his chair, as if expecting something to jump out at any moment. But everything stayed calm. "It's over," he whispered, though his voice trembled. "It's finally over." The next few hours passed without incident. No strange noises, no flickering lights, no figures on the screens. It was as if the building had returned to being just an empty, broken hospital again. By the time the first faint light of morning crept through the dirty windows, Daniel almost convinced himself that what he experienced wasn't real. Maybe it was stress. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe his mind had played tricks on him. At exactly 6 a.m., the door opened. Daniel flinched hard, spinning around in his chair. The supervisor walked in casually, as if nothing had happened. "You made it," he said, his tone neutral. Daniel stared at him for a moment, still trying to process everything. What is this place?" he finally asked. The man shrugged, removing his coat. "Old building. Bad history." "That's not what I mean," Daniel said quickly. "The rules, the voices, the things on the cameras." The supervisor paused, then looked at him carefully. "Did you follow the rules?" Daniel hesitated, remembering the door, the voice, the figure in room 12. "Yes," he said quietly. The man gave a small nod. "Then you're fine." A chill ran down Daniel's spine. What happens if someone doesn't follow them? The supervisor didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured toward the monitors. "Take a look." Daniel slowly turned his head, his stomach tightening. One of the screens had changed. Room 12. The bed was no longer empty. Someone was sitting on it. Daniel's breath caught. The figure wore a security uniform. His uniform. The man's face was pale, lifeless, his eyes completely black. And he was staring directly at the camera. At him. Daniel stumbled back in horror. "No, that's not." "Last guard," the supervisor said calmly from behind him. Daniel couldn't look away. The figure on the screen slowly tilted its head, mimicking the exact way Daniel had moved earlier. The supervisor's voice lowered. He didn't follow the rules. Daniel's chest tightened as realization hit him. The building didn't just haunt people. It kept them. And as Daniel stared at the screen, the figure's lips slowly curled into a smile. A smile that didn't belong to him.